Welcome to episode 74 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. This episode's main segment, I'm interviewing Kamal Ahmed. He's one of the original Jerky Boys and is now a screenwriter and director. He just did a movie called Laugh, Killer, Laugh, starring William Forsythe. We're going to dig into how he got this film produced, so stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they are very much appreciated. Couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 74. Also, if you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. A quick plug for the new SYS screenwriting analysis service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation of your screenplay. All the readers have experience reading for studios, production companies, agencies, or contests. The readers I've partnered with are the gatekeepers of the industry. They're exactly the same people who are going to be reading your scripts at the companies that you submit to. The readers will evaluate your script on several key factors like concept and premise, structure, character, dialogue, and marketability. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend. I'm also offering a bonus. If you get a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking to make movies. Also on the website, you can read a quick bio on each reader and pick the one who you would like to read your screenplay. In the past week, I've rolled out a whole host of new services with this product. I now have a television script option, either 30 pages or 60 pages, and I've added a proofreading service as well. So if you don't want an analysis but would like someone to proofread your script, we now offer that too. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing Kamal Ahmed. Here is the interview. Welcome, Kamal, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I just want to touch briefly on your sort of transition. This is the first things that occurred to me as I watched the movie and learned about your recent movie, Laugh, Killer, Laugh. How did you make the transition from Jerky Boys to being a writer, director, producer? Was that something you always wanted to do? And maybe give us a little brief history on kind of how you made the transition from really performer to writer, director, producer.
Okay, when I was 7, I had a cousin that was maybe about 5 years older than me, and we would go to Times Square. Now, you're talking about 1973, 1974, and I was so little, we would go to Times Square, and that's when, before all the movie theaters were all porno. It was like, it had all these, all the grindhouse stuff. And I was so little that when we go to the box office, the lady would say, "Hey, he can't come in here. He's just a little kid." And my cousin would say, "Oh, I'm babysitting him." And they'd say, "Oh, okay, you can come in." So I got to see all these great movies, like these movies that are like classics now, like these grindhouse movies, like everything. I saw all the Bruce Lee stuff. I saw all the blaxploitation. I saw all the mafia movies. I saw everything as a kid. And as I was growing up, I just always loved those kind of movies, and I would always, think in those terms. I got into music, I got into all these things, but filmmaking was always something I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And the Jerky Boy thing kind of happened as an accident, and I only wanted to pursue a record contract with the Jerky Boys only to push my music career. But when that wasn't going anywhere and the comedy got stale, I was always into the directing, and what really got me into it more than anything else was right about the time the Jerky Boys got big. I moved to Hell's Kitchen, and there was this building near my house that a lot of actors lived in, and I would be sitting with these guys that were about 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys would always be talking about, oh, I should have did this when I was younger, or I could have did that, I would have did this, but they never did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I said in my head, like, I'm young enough. Let me get into this. Let me just like make a movie. And this was before digital cameras were around, and I mean, the way digital cameras are around now, where make a movie relatively cheap. And I got into it. I wrote my first script, and God Has a Rap Sheet. Well, actually, I wrote a couple of others before that, but they never went anywhere. But God Has a Rap Sheet was the first serious script that I wrote that I felt really showed my style that I'm following right now. That's where I found my voice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I think that's actually a great setup to your recent film. So let's dig into Laugh Killer Laugh, starring William Forsythe. Maybe to start out, maybe you can give us a quick pitch or just a log line of the film for people that maybe haven't seen the film or haven't seen the trailer yet.
Laugh Killer Laugh is the story about a very bizarre person who grew up, being brutalized by a headmaster, and doesn't really seem to enjoy life, obviously from his background, and just through a matter of events, just has a new lease on life in a way, an epiphany, sort of, and he's finally experiences life. All the good things that he's never really took time to notice, and then and that comes through meeting a young gal, and then ultimately joining a creative writing class that it's almost like therapeutic for him, and then something dramatic happens where where he changes, not back to the first way he was, but more like a middle ground. So, he's a person that actually ends up having three personalities in the movie. Like, he starts off kind of rough and gruff and, not much, very introverted, and then he becomes a little bit too extroverted. And the third act, he becomes like, sort of like the way most people are. A little bit in the middle.
And I think it's important to note that, you say he's an interesting, character. He's a hitman, and that's kind of the conceit of this, is sort of a character study of a hitman, correct?
Well, he's perceived as a hitman, but he really is a diamond thief, but he comes across, more like the type of hitman character. But at the true thing I was trying to get across, he was more like a diamond thief. Generally anyone that works for the mob is some kind of a whack.
Yeah. And that's what I meant. That's what I meant more. He's a mobster. Yeah. So tell me, where did this sort of idea come from? Where did you get the kernel? And it sounds like you kind of maybe answered that, talking about all these movies in the early 70s that you were watching.
Well, I'll tell you, I've always been a big fan of film noirs. And I always wanted to write a film noir, do a film noir movie. But, the problem is that, I work on such a low budget that, to recreate that time period, the 40s to the 50s, that's like, so much money. So I said, all right, let me keep it like a neo-noir. But I was always fascinated with a few articles I read about this very rare phenomenon where people, through head traumas, change personalities so extreme that they're not even recognizable to their own family. Like, someone could be real mean and wake up all friendly and nice, or the opposite of that. And there's even rare cases where people have woken up and spoke different languages and acted like a different nationality. So I said, wouldn't it be interesting if I could combine that kind of film noirish sensibility with this really bizarre phenomenon I've been reading about, and that's where Laugh Killer Laugh really comes from.
Okay. Yeah. So now take us through your writing process. How long does it take you to write a script, and maybe even talk specifically about this one, from start to finish? How long do you work on a script like this?
Well, what I do first is in a notebook, I basically write the story, but not the dialogue. Like I just kind of, picture in my head like how the scenes play out. Mm-hmm. And then then I start writing the screenplay with the dialogue. Now where I'm a little bit different than a lot of people is like I consider myself like a real New York guy from the streets and everything like that, and I grew up in very diverse neighborhoods in New York, so I got to really hear colorful dialogue from all types, right? Mm-hmm. And so I write the dialogue in that sense, but the actual original screenplay, The Laugh Killer Laugh, was much longer, and it involved the female character much greater. And when I got William Forsythe to come on board, he convinced me to bring the story down to more of a revenge story. Because Charles Bronson was the guy that I had in mind playing the Frank Stone character. Like I pictured Charles Bronson when I was writing the dialogue and everything. Obviously, he wasn't available. So when Forsythe came on board, he convinced me to bring the script down to make it more of a revenge story, where once the female character gets killed, he goes on a revenge spree. So, but when I write the scripts that I've done, they usually take about a month, maybe 90 days, just to write it, and maybe 2 more months to tweak things. Mm-hmm. My process is very strange. When I'm laying down, I look up to my ceiling, and I imagine the ceiling as a movie. Like I'm looking at the film like that, like that I see in my head, and also I use a lot of things that I see in real life, because real life is the best storyteller. Sure.
Now tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me about just your process on a day-to-day basis. Do you have like sessions where you write for 3 hours or 6 hours, or do you write when you get inspired? What's sort of your just daily process when you're in the when you're actually writing a script? What's your daily process like?
I tell you, the toughest script I ever wrote, like where it took like about a year, was my first film I ever did called God Has a Rap Sheet. Mm-hmm. And what was so interesting, I had an apartment in Times Square, or Hell's Kitchen, really. And my window, where the computer was right level where the street light, the head of, the light of the street light was, right? And sometimes I would start in the morning where you hear the hustle and bustle outside, and you didn't hear because you're so into the writing process that you don't hear these things, but you're aware they're somewhere in the background. And then the next thing you know, it goes from like cars honking and all this to like I'd be at the computer so long, then all of a sudden when I'd run out of an idea I'm thinking, I'd hear the hum of the light. I'd hear the hum, and it would make me go, you realize I've been sitting at this typewriter computer for like 11 hours without even having a break or something like that. And that's how it goes. And then there's times that completely run out of ideas, and I'm just staring at a screen and everything like that. So it really comes in. It comes in drips and drabs sometimes. Or sometimes you just get you're just so full of ideas for a couple of days. Now, I've heard things like, it's always good to start in the morning. You have more ideas there. I start just whenever I'm, nighttime, afternoon, it really, sometimes when I run out of ideas, I go out and I just take a walk or go to a bar or go somewhere, because sometimes just seeing life like inspires you, just something, Sure. Maybe that's why so many writers over the years have been known to dabble in and drink and all that kind of stuff, maybe to get inspiration. Who knows? I'm not recommending that to people. I'm just saying that's how it works for me. Like I use real life, I use imagination, I use. But what I try to do is I always try to stay away from. My work kind of reminding people of someone else's work. I mean, like, when you write a gangster film, obviously most gangster films have the same kind of format, but I try to, I feel like, to be more like original and everything like that is the key for me.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay, so now let's move on. You've got the script written. What was your next step? I mean, you were a producer on this. Obviously, you directed it too, so I assume you were probably involved in raising the money. So maybe take us through that process of, you have the finished script. What do you do next to actually make this thing happen?
I tell you, the toughest thing to do is get money off of somebody. Mm-hmm. Because when they ask, the question everyone asks is, will I get my money back? And all this kind of stuff, And, the funny thing about films is there's no formula. You could have a movie with the greatest actors on earth, and it doesn't mean the movie's going to be a hit. And you could make a movie with absolutely no names in it, and it could be like a big success. So it's so hit or miss. So it's so tough to get the money, and it really is a very long process. It's meetings after meetings with people that that is semi-interested in getting involved in a movie, to people that own production companies that are totally interested in making a film, and it's just really a matter of luck and timing. Mm-hmm. Unless you are such a big name that you're bankable just by your name. Like if Quentin Tarantino, wants money to make his movie, he'll get it because they know he's bankable. But when you're an under the radar guy like myself, it's much tougher to get the money. So I was fortunate on this one and the last one where I got it relatively quick. But I look at that as more like luck.
Yeah. Let me just dig into that a little bit. So you said, going to these meetings with people that are only halfway interested. Again, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of screenwriters that are listening to this that are just thinking, well, gee, maybe this is the path for me to get my script made. Maybe you can give us just a little bit of, advice and practical, information about how to get some of those meetings. How do you even set up meetings that with potential investors?
Well, my advice is, because the first movie I made, God Has a Rap Sheet, was more like a art house type of movie. It was something from the heart. It was a story that's like kind of tough to sell today's standards, right? Mm-hmm. But I made it, and this was before you have these digital cameras that you could shoot a lot cheaper, But as I got in the business longer, I realized it is called film business, and you have to kind of, until you get more of a name or whatever like that, there's certain movies that people are more interested in investing in and taking a risk in. And you just have to find something in yourself to want to make a story like that, want to write a story that is more popular with people to invest money with, which is, anything from action to horror to some kind of drama that's, that affects people's sensibilities. So, you got to kind of stick with that idea if you want to get people to not take you serious, but seriously think about investing with you. Now, where you go to get the meetings and everything like that, I mean, meetings could happen anywhere. You could go to a party where, you're just talking about, hey, I'm a screenwriter and I'm trying to make a film, and there's always someone at a party that, oh, really? I have an uncle that owns a factory and he always wanted to make a movie. You know what I'm saying? There's something like that happens, or, but just by going to certain events, you'll get a card from somebody that, says something production and everything like that. And, if you just network, eventually you'll get a meeting with someone that may want to invest with you. That's all I could offer. I'm not on one of these levels yet where I could drive into the lot of Warner Brothers and speak with, these real big shots. I'm really like true independent filmmaker that, I'll talk to a guy that owns a pizzeria that, that may want to invest. A big time guy won't do that. They deal with the with the true studio heads. You see what I'm saying? There's all these levels that you just gonna have to do.
The bottom line is it's just about beating the street. I mean, just anybody you can talk to, you just talk it up.
Exactly. You got to be a salesman. It's a little bit of snake oil salesman. It's a little bit of, but I'm very truthful with people. I tell them, if this is all the money you have, do not invest with this. It has to be something you're willing to gamble with. Like if you went to Vegas, how much money would you be willing to spend in Vegas? Well, why don't you spend it with this movie? Why don't you look at this as the crap table or the roulette table? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the best way I do it. It works for me like that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about getting William Forsythe attached to the movie. I'm curious which came first with a film like this. Did you get him attached to the movie and that help you get the funds? That was something that would impress, potential investors, or did you get the money and then go to William Forsythe and make an offer?
No, what I did was when I wrote the script, I was picturing Charles Bronson as the lead. So I wrote the dialogue, and really Charles Bronson, the way his personality was in Death Wish. And, when that was finished, I said, man, now who the hell can I get to play this? And then I thought of William Forsythe. So when he agreed to do it, if I got the financing, that's when I would tell people, I said, hey, listen, man, if you give me the money, William Forsythe said he'd do this Frank Stone character. So that's what really helped, that he liked the script.
Yeah. And did you have a previous relationship with him? Maybe walk us through that process. Did you just cold call his agent and say, hey, I got a great project for him? Would you guys take a look at it, or did you have some sort of previous relationship or a connection?
Yeah, believe it or not, the last movie I made, 1,000 Times More Brutal, I wanted him in that movie, and a friend of mine who I actually ended up using in Laugh Kill Laugh in a small part, James Lorenz, who was the lead in Frankenhooker. He was at one of those autograph shows where all these celebrities are signing autographs, and Forsythe was sitting right next to him. And he's the one that got William to, give me a call. He couldn't do the last movie I made, 1,000 Times More Brutal, so I approached him about this one. And same thing with Tom Sizemore. He was supposed to be in the last movie too, but he couldn't, scheduling, he couldn't do it, so I ended up using the two of them in this movie. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, no, I'm saying it always helps when you tell an investor, you have some kind of names in the film. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit just briefly about getting a distributor. Did you take this film to film festivals? How did you ultimately, find the distributor? No, I didn't go the film festival route. ITN Distribution has worked with me for the last couple of films, and I really love the work that they do. And they've been working with me. Anything I put out that I'm in a relationship with them where they take my film out and everything like that. So I work with ITN. I'm lucky in that sense. A lot of people are always on the lookout for somebody to take their project, but we have a great working relationship, and I'm happy with what has come about with them. Yeah. And I'd be curious, do you, since you have a working relationship with them, do you go to them with this package, okay, I've got William Forsythe, here's the screenplay, it's a kind of a mob, character-driven mob action script. Do you go to that beforehand and they can say, yeah, we could sell this, or no, we cannot sell this? Do you get a little bit of feedback before you actually made this movie from the distributor? You know what, that only really works right now the film business has changed so much because of so many movies are made now because of the digital camera, where you could make a film much cheaper now than when I first got into the business, where I shot on 35 millimeter, and not many people could make a film shot like that. So there's so many more films now that the only movies that get bankable money before you make it, which is, I believe they call it pre-sales, is like really if you use like the 1 or 2% stars out there that are really like blockbuster type names, you know, like a Tom Cruise or somebody like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they're so, you know, like it's, you don't really get, you know, money like that anymore. You know, unless it's like one of those, like, you know, one of those names that just the name right there, you could get the money, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think you said earlier in this interview, which I think is so important for people to understand, you were talking about earlier just about, you know, when writing a script, you have to understand that there's certain genres that are going to sell more and that investors are going to be more interested in investing in. So I guess what I'm getting at is kind of, where did you get that knowledge? I mean, it seems like it would be a logical place, a relationship with a distributor where the distributor is telling you, you know, no, we're not going to give you maybe any upfront money, but we can tell you that action movies with William Forsythe is something that we can sell. So I'm just curious where you kind of got that you know, knowledge of what genres to actually do.
Well, you know, it's very simple. You know, it's through trial and error. Like the first movie I made was an art house type of film, and it was really tough to sell. Plus, I had no names in it. And, you know, over time you realize, well, you see other movies that other filmmakers, your contemporaries, are making that get quick sales. And I started realizing, like, hey, wait a minute, you know, like, you know, horror, action, you know, gangster, crime, like those kind of movies have historically always sold. And the art house movies don't really sell, but they're more from the heart. They're things to do like as more of a heartfelt project. And, you know, you learn these things as you move along. And I'm not telling anyone, you know, not to make the film you want to make. I'm just saying that it's just tougher to get deals for films that are more like the art house type of film. You know, you know, I try to stick with the type of movies that I watch now. Like you know, look, my favorite movie of all time is The Godfather. My second favorite movie is Midnight Cowboy. You know what I'm saying? I guess if Midnight Cowboy came out today, it would be more like an art house type of film. But you know, like you just gotta, I say do what you want to do, but realize that it also is a business, and the expectations should come, you know, thinking of like where the business is going. And plus, it's cyclical. Like you know, the distributors tell me all the time, like what's selling. Like what's selling this year could be like like martial arts movies type of movies, but they weren't selling 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying? But still, like, you know, there's certain 5 types of movies, like different genres that usually historically sell. So you're in a weird position. You gotta write what you love to write about, but you also have to know, you know, the expectations of what you do and how far it'll get. But I say just write what you want to write.
Yeah. Sound advice for sure. So maybe you can just tell us, how can people see Laugh Killer Laugh? Is it going to be available video on demand, Netflix, you know, iTunes? Maybe you can just give us the release date on that if people want to check it out.
Yes, this April 24th will be, you could get it a video on demand. It'll be playing in a limited theater release, 2 theaters in New York and 1 in Los Angeles. Okay. And you should be able to get it on just about all the available ways to download a movie or rent a movie.
Perfect. I always like to wrap up just maybe if you are on Twitter or Facebook or have a blog or anything, maybe you can just tell us your Twitter handle or Facebook page or blog, just if people want to kind of follow along.
Yes, on Facebook we have a Laugh Killer Laugh page, and also there's a laughkillerlaugh.com. to do the Twitter thing. I'm more of a Facebook guy.
Okay. Sounds good. I will link to those in the show notes. I'll find those and I'll link all that to the show notes so people can find those easy. Well, you've been very generous with your time. This has been a great interview. I've really learned a lot. I wish you the best of luck with this film.
Oh, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. It's making movies is really tough, but you know, anyone that makes movies obviously does it because they love it. They love to do it, and with me, it's just about the love of making a film. So
yeah.
As long as someone likes it, I'm happy. I accomplished what I set out to do.
For sure. No, I really enjoyed it. As I said, I watched it a few days ago, and I really enjoyed it. So mission accomplished.
Oh, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. We'll catch you later. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
A quick plug for my email and fax blast service. I'm running a special right now where you can purchase 1/3 of the blast for a little more than $50. The total list is around 6,000 contacts, so this first 1/3 is about 2,000 contacts, so it's still a pretty sizable list. I've done this just to lower the barrier to entry so that people can check out the blast without having to invest a whole lot of money up front. Hopefully the blast will work for them, and then of course you can buy the last 2/3 of the blast if you find that it is successful. The one thing that hasn't changed, I still require that you join SYS Select, which at the time of this recording is just $24.99 per month. The reason I require this as part of the process is that I'm going to personally look at your logline and query letter and help you make them as good as possible. This is really for everyone's benefit. I want to make sure that the query letters and log lines are well written before I send them out to my list. The people receiving these emails, queries, they can unsubscribe from the list at any time. So these blasts, they need to be halfway decent. I don't want a bunch of half-baked query letters going out, as that will just burn up the list for everybody who wants to use this service in the future. Also, by getting my feedback on your log line and query letter, it means your response rate is going to be much higher. I've been doing this for a while, and I've had a lot of success from cold query letters, so I think I can help you make your query letter and logline better. So the first third of the blast plus 1 month of SYS Select is just $78, and that's a blast to more than 2,000 industry producers. It's really never going to get any cheaper than this, so if you'd like to try it out, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/blast. In the next episode of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Julius Ona and Myron Tiro Shalavam. I know I butchered those names, and I do apologize to those filmmakers. They just wrote a film called The Girl is in Trouble, starring Columbus Short and Wilmer Vladirama. The film was executive produced by Spike Lee, and we talk a bit about how they got Spike Lee involved in the project. So keep an eye out for that next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on something from today's interview with Kamal. I think writing films with a clear market is so important, and he touched on that just talking about his early film was more of an art house film, something that was much harder to sell, and he started to see some of his, other people in the industry. They were creating more genre films, and they were having an easier time selling it. So that's kind of where he gravitated to. So really listen to what he says. Action, horror, mob movies, these seem to have a clear market, and the people making these films seem to sell them. And what that translates to as a screenwriter is that because these movies are selling in the marketplace and they're recouping their investment, it means that there's more producers and directors looking for these types of screenplays. One thing I'm noticing from running the SYS script analysis service is that I'm seeing a disproportionately high number of dramas. Not that you can't sell a drama. Dramas do sometimes get made. The interview I did in last week's podcast was a movie. It was the filmmakers who did a movie called See You in Valhalla. That was a drama. In a few weeks, I'm interviewing the director of a movie called Echo of Wars. That's a post-Civil War drama. So these films can sell. You can make them, and you can write the script. You can potentially find producers who want to make them, get them finances. But it's just a much more uphill battle. It's going to be harder to sell these scripts. Because there's because there isn't much of a market for these drama scripts, and because there isn't much of a market, there's not going to be a lot of people looking to buy them. But even more importantly, there's more writers writing these types of scripts, so there's fewer of these movies getting made, and there's more of these scripts getting written, and that's just a supply and demand thing. So if you're going to write one of these scripts, it's got to be much better than a lot of the other ones, just because it's got to stand out. There's many more of these scripts getting made than are ever going to be produced. Whereas if you go down sort of the food chain a little bit, at least in maybe like screenwriting, artistic credibility, you go down that to more of these genre films, as I said, the action, the horror, the mom movies. There's fewer of these movies getting written. There's fewer writers writing these movies, but there's more of these movies getting made. So just look at the math on that. I mean, what does that say about the chances of you selling your drama versus the chances of you selling, your limited location mob movie? And hopefully I am practicing what I'm preaching. I've mentioned this on the podcast many times. I'm currently writing a limited location mob thriller, so a mob action thriller. So we'll see if I'm able to sell that over the next couple of years, and we'll see if that gets made. It's kind of a, I'm not just, sitting here spouting off and telling people to do that. I am actually doing that myself. So we'll see if it works out for me. But really just listen to what Kamal said. I mean, and think about what I'm saying in terms of, the odds. Everything in life is it's kind of a numbers game, and it's about improving your numbers. And I really believe that writing some of these lower budget genre movies with a clear market is going to help you create better odds for yourself, and getting some of those first credits, getting something optioned. If you're just a screenwriter out there in the middle of the nowhere, working on your scripts yourself, just getting something optioned, starting to talk to some producers, that's just going to help it's going to make you feel like you're actually doing something. It's going to make you feel like you're actually moving in the right direction, as opposed to just writing some of these more artistic movies, some of these dramas, constantly sending them in, getting nowhere, and just feeling like you're sort of alone in a box and not really moving forward. Taking a step back, writing some of these movies, genre movies that have a clearer market, and getting sort of in the fray and optioning some stuff and getting on the phone with some producers, all of a sudden it's just going to make you feel like you're not just, wasting your time. And that's going to help you improve as a writer, and that's going to help you persevere, because there's this is a long slog. It may take you several years or more, a decade. It may take you, numerous years to actually get your career off the ground. And if you have some small successes along the way, that's going to be the fuel that just propels you along and makes you feel like, maybe maybe I'm not just kidding myself. Maybe I actually can do this. So and that's kind of one of the things, to wrap up today, that's one of the things I really hope people are getting out of this podcast, is that they're seeing the sorts of independent films that are getting produced. Many of the filmmakers that I talk to, and many of the films that I'm talking about on the podcast, they're probably not films that most of you ever would have even heard about, but yet these films are getting made. They're finding audiences. And so I just really hope that you go and watch these films and study these films and figure out, start to go on IMDb Pro and click through some of these films, find them on IMDb Pro, click through some of the executive producers, some of the companies that are involved, the distribution companies, and start to look at some of those movies. Maybe start to target some of those companies with your marketing. Look at some of the companies that are distributing these things. Some of them will also be production companies. Look at some of the other movies that they're producing. If they don't produce movies, just drill down in IMDb Pro. Start to look at some of these companies that are making these movies. These companies are very, very open to receiving scripts from outside sources. They're not like the studio system where they're getting high-level agented submissions. Some of these production companies are not getting that many submissions. They're not getting the high-level, studio-level writers submitting to them. So they are more open to hearing from screenwriters. And especially if you're really versed in what they're doing and you understand these genre movies, you're watching these movies, you understand what they can do in terms of budget, what they can do in terms of cast. That can all help your pitch. You can get these people on the phone. You can meet them at film festivals. You can meet them at film markets. And you can just start to build relationships with these sorts of people. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.